Well, thanks everyone for joining and taking the time out of your day. I know it's always kind of tough in the middle of the day to make time for a webinar, so I'm going to try to keep it nice and short too. But my name is Keri. I am an SRE at Nobl9, and today I want to talk to you about time travel, but more specific time traveling as an SRE. There we go. So the first thing I want to do is I want to break down what I consider to be the SRE universe. So I like to think our SRE universe is made up of these two dimensions that we use to measure our product performance. So it's broken down into customers and our services, right? So when we measure the dimension of customers, we're looking at questions like, what features do our customers like best? Are they satisfied with the availability of our product? What about if they're satisfied with the features that are currently available? You know, what do we offer that's unique that brings us new customers or keeps our existing customers? So everything that surrounds our customers is how our customers interact with our product, how they feel about it, what do we do to retain them as customers, right? And then there's the dimension of services. And that helps us measure things like that we're kind of expecting already, right? Like, is our service available? Is our service slow? Is our service returning the expected response? Are we able to handle the demand for this service? Basically, you know, like mostly the 4 golden signals, but just the overall actual performance of our service within the product. And I think there's been a lot of tools and a lot of practices over the years that try to connect these two, but ultimately I think they continue to be measured separately and often by completely separate teams. And it's still a lot of really interesting data, but not totally useful without context because they're always relative to each other. So my favorite tool as an SRE takes these two dimensions of our customers and services, and it puts it into a space-time context. So now what we're looking at is, how do our customers feel about this feature over time? And how is this service performing over time? And we can chart those two dimensions now over a single time window. And what that's going to do is allow us to measure the performance of our services over time relative to a goal that factors in our customers' minimum satisfaction. So let's say our customers seem to be happy whenever 90% of our login latency is below 800 milliseconds, right? So now we can chart that as a target over how our service is actually performing and return a budget that helps us track how frequently we've gone over 800 milliseconds. And then we can alert on that and help us keep under this 90% threshold. So to me, that's leagues better than trying to keep it 100% of the time under 800 milliseconds, right? Because every time like a single login would go over 800 milliseconds, we could get paged for something that could resolve itself, or maybe it was just like a single anomaly. And I hate waking up in the middle of the night for little things like that. So anyway, hopefully that sounds familiar to you, because what I'm trying to describe here is SLOs. And to me, the biggest gains from using SLOs is that I have a better work-life balance, right? Like, I'm not going to get constantly paged for a down service that no one's using, or a one-time spike, like an anomaly, like we're just talking about in our metrics, that could have waited for working hours. So I like to think I have the work-life balance. Then now I also have this awesome communication tool that helps start better conversations, especially cross-team. It's going to help us make better informed decisions about what type of projects we should be dedicating our time to. And out of all the SLO platforms I've seen, I have to say none of them compared to the experience with Nobl9. And I know that probably sounds really biased, but it was a really big part of the reason I came to work here. It's because I was just so impressed by the product and I really wanted to help it grow. Yeah, I mean, like, SLOs are, I think, a relatively simple concept, but it could be so powerful when the platform is done well. So I just wanted to take some time today to explore 3 of my favorite parts of building SLOs in Nobl9. So the first one is SLOs as code. So this is hands down one of my favorite tools in the Nobl9 toolbox. Like, working on a team often means having multiple cooks in the kitchen. And I think Git already does a really good job of trying to mitigate some of that problem. And SLOs as code lets us use that same methodology to manage our SLOs. So I can even do things like add SLO actions to my CI/CD So for example, anytime we make a release, I can programmatically create an annotation on my SLO to mark when that release happened so that I can kind of track, how that release has affected my error budget. And that's been super useful to us in the past because we can help identify issues ahead of time too. There's a ton of really great demos on this. So I'll have Erza leave some links in the chat to them so that we can keep this nice and short. But this right here is just super powerful, makes it super easy to build and manage a large number of SLOs, data sources, agents, like any of that stuff all at once. So I really love this tool. The next one that's one of my favorites is called the Service Health Dashboard. For me, one of the biggest struggles in general, and it's also kind of become a pet peeve, is just how we end up organizing like massive amounts of data. I think anyone who's ever contributed to like a knowledge base probably knows this pain, but it carries over to any high volume system. But I love the flexibility of sorting by projects and services, even the way I name things and labels as well. I think altogether, seeing that in a bird's eye view like this, it's just so powerful, and it really cuts down the amount of time I need to spend looking at the data to comprehend what's going on. It's also a really great chart for upper management too. I've worked with a lot of managers who oversee something like 30 SRE teams. And, if each one of those teams is building out 10 to 20 SLOs each, that's potentially like 600 SLOs that one manager might need to be reviewing. So if you imagine like all 600 of those SLOs combined down into 30 projects, so one project per team, and then each project or team has 1 to 3 services, that cuts down like 85% of what this person has to look at just to be able to review how their teams are doing. So it just makes it really easy to focus on the ones that are exhausted or at risk, and just makes it easier overall to monitor the services that I'm on call for too, which is another reason I like this dashboard. And it's just really nice and clean too, because I get very easily distracted. So this is like a nice, like all-in-one place to look at my SLOs and how they're doing. And then last but not least, my absolute favorite, and the one that I want to show you a demo of today because it's brand new, it's called Replay. And up until now, if I had made an SLO, let's say for like a login latency, I'll put it on a 7-day time window, I would only get data on that SLO from the point in which I created the SLO, right? So it's like from now onward. And what that means is if I have like a 7-day rolling window, I would have to wait about 7 days to get any real data out of it. So the other thing I think that makes this really nice is like SLOs are meant to be iterative and relative. So on top of all of this, it's probably going to take me a couple of weeks to even like tune my SLO to be meaningful. And that's a lot of time to wait to get really good value out of this SLO. And during that time, I'm tweaking it, and I might not fully trust my targets yet enough to move all of my alerting to this SLO. So what Replay does is it cuts down a huge portion of that time, because now I can create my SLO with historical data. And so I can start tweaking right away. I don't have to wait, n number of days to get any like decent information so that I can start making those tweaks right away. So yeah, it's like time traveling into the past. That's kind of where the name of this webinar came from. And I really love what it's done for us so far. Like one of the things that we've done recently that I found this to be really useful in is after an incident, when we do our retro, we've been trying to make an SLO that could have helped us catch that incident ahead of time if it wasn't something that we got alerted to early enough. And so what we can do with this is, let's say we had an incident yesterday and I'm creating my SLO for it today. Now I can create my SLO with enough historical data in there to capture what was happening during that incident to help me tweak my targets to be more realistic, to give me better information and get that SLO up and running like ASAP, where I can get alerts going on that pretty quickly too. So it's really nice, to be able to see how my error budget would have been eaten up yesterday had this SLO been up and running during that incident, and when it would have alerted me based on a realistic burn down. So it's like instant incident protection. That's a tongue twister, sorry. Yeah, so right now it's still in beta, but we've got support for this for up to 30 days max historical retrieval for Datadog, New Relic, Prom, both like your own on-prem Prom, but if you run the AWS managed Prom too, Lightstep and Splunk. We are adding more all the time, and we're also keeping it to one concurrent replay run at a time. So that just means that only one SLO can actively be retrieving historical data at a time. Once that historical data is filled out for that SLO, you can create another one. And this is, again, just kind of during the beta period, because we want to make sure that, as we're pulling in potentially hundreds of thousands of data points on your data source, that we're not oversaturating anything. And as we get more information and as people continue to use this, we're going to continue to grow this because we really love this feature and we think it's super useful. So yeah, so let's jump into a little demo. I've got my Nobl9 account logged in here. Everyone can see my screen still, right? I didn't accidentally cancel this. Yeah, okay, it's up. All right, let me just make this big. All right. Cool. So yeah, I'm logged into my Nobl9 account here. This is my, main SLO page where you can see all my nice graphs here and all the changes in my service health. Here up here, if I go service health, this brings me my service health dashboard, which is the bird's eye view that I was talking about earlier that I love. But let's hop over to the integrations page because I want to show you the first step in working with replay. So for this demo purpose here, I'm going to use this Lightstep integration that I've already got set up. And you can see on the right here, there's some information already for period of historical data retrieval. And I have it set to 30 days max, which is the max currently for the data source, and a default of 1 day retrieval. So I'm going to hit edit here so you can see what it would look like as you create your own data source. But here's all my configuration. This is a direct integration, so I'm just giving it an API token, basically. And then at the bottom here, you can see advanced settings. So maximum period for historical data retrieval set to 30. Again, that's the current max. This is pretty flexible. We kept it to 30 again during the beta period, just because a lot of data sources also have their own retention policies, and we want to make sure that we're within that period of time. And also because there's only one concurrent run at a time right now, we want to make sure that we're not making it so long that you would have to wait, a significant period of time to see your historical data. So here's again default period. I'm actually going to set this to 0 right now. And the reason I like to do that is because with queries and my SLO information, I want to make sure that the first time I set it up, I'm getting the data that I expect out of it. Because if I have a malformed query for my SLI and I set up, like a 30-day historical data retrieval, it's going to be trying to process a lot of potentially not correct information before I can really see anything. Like I'm going to have to wait for that information to process to be able to see it in my SLO. So I just like to do this because I think it just makes it a lot easier and just significantly faster to get up and running on my SLO. I can make sure that, my data correctness is there, it's correct. And then when I make sure that I'm getting the data points that I expect to see, then I usually delete that SLO, create a new one with my historical data retrieval. And then at that point, I can wait a couple minutes, and make sure that everything looks good. So yeah, I'm going to save this as 0 for now, just so you can see what it looks like. So now I have a 0-day default, 30-day max on my Lightstep integration. So let me pull up the stream ID here, and we are going to create an SLO on this. So right before this webinar, I created this guy here to make sure that my SLO was retrieving the data that I expect. So this is just a brand new, no historical data on this SLO. You can see it's pretty new. All right, so, oops. So this looks good. This is what I'm expecting here. So let's go ahead and create one with historical data. So I'm gonna hit the plus up here to create a new SLO. Let's put this in our login. So a portal project under the login service, because this is going to be a mobile login error rate SLO. So I'm going to pick my light step data source. You can see here, so my period for historical data retrieval, this was the default I just changed. So you can see it's set to 0 days. I'm going to move this to 1 day because we already confirmed that our SLO is working. And then I got a stream ID here for us, and I'm going to put this as an error threshold. So let's put this on, well, let's put this on a 1 day rolling window just because I'm only retrieving 1 day, and I'm just doing it as a 1 day so we know it'll go quickly and we can see it instant gratification, you know. So let's see, I'm going to make this target acceptable. I want 99% of all values to be less than 10% error rate. Okay, and then I'm gonna name, all right, got my display name here. Let's name this mobile login. Oops, mobile logins. I like to just put webinar in here, just so that we know that this is the one that we made during the webinar. I'm not going to put an alert policy in here. I could have set one up on this project ahead of time, but for now, let's just keep that blank. And let's see, I've got a link to my Lightstep dashboard that I could put in here. So I'm just going to go like this, and that's going to give me a link on the side of my SLO to go directly to the dashboard where this information is being pulled from. And we're going to say this description is mobile login error rate from Lightstep on any service tagged with iOS. All right, so let's create this, and we should see here in a second. So we got our mobile logins, 1 day rolling window, acceptance rate of 0.1, so that's 10% of error rates, and 99% of all error rates are under 10% error rate. All right. So you can see it's re-importing here. This is the replay doing its thing. And I'm just going to close this for a second. And let's find this on here. Mobile logins. And this will probably take a couple minutes because it's pulling in data points from every 2 minutes for the past 24 hours. So yeah, importing data from the past 1 day. And once this is done loading, we should see a chart. It's got to go to space and back. We need to give it a minute. I'm impatient. Can refresh our page too. Maybe that'll help. Mobile logins. All right, looks like it's still importing. So as you can see, like this is only importing 1 day's worth, and it still takes a few minutes. And if you think about doing that for 30 days worth, it can be quite a bit of time before you can see your information on here. And that's why I like to do the 0 days, you know, only new data on my SLO the first time that I build it, just to confirm that I've got the right information in there. So we should see this in a couple minutes here. There it goes. Starting to fill in here. Loading data. Ooh, there we go. So let's see what that took 3 minutes, I think. 2 minutes, 3 minutes. But yeah, so take a look at this. Like this, this particular stream that I have on Lightstep is got some cyclical data that I know is going to go over my error budget. So just from pulling in this one day, I can already see how my error budget had been burning. And, you know, if I want to focus on a 7-day time window, that helps me kind of adjust based off of, you know, the incident that just happened to, and make sure we know where to focus on. So this is really cool. I love being able to get this data. You know, it feels like a long time because we were like watching paint dry, but I think relatively this was so quick to be able to get that amount of information like right away. And this is that link I showed you earlier where if I click right in here, it's going to bring me to Lightstep and I can see the data. Sorry, this is tiny. I can see the data right here that I'm pulling from. So this is my error rate here. So every time this spiked over 10%, it started eating up my error budget. So yeah, that's how replay works. It's pretty simple, but pretty powerful, I think. And I absolutely love working with it. Let's go back here and let me bring this back up. So that was it. That was nice and short. Thank you everybody for watching. And if you have any questions that you're shy to ask for in this, we have this SLO monthly Slack channel that's really cool. They also do meetups every month, and there's been some really awesome speakers there too. Like I think the last one that I attended was someone from Google talking about doing mass scale SLOs and how you can scale on such a large amount of SLOs in a large team. So that one was really interesting. And then we also have this really cool site that we built out called SLO DLC, which is a really great place to start if you aren't sure how to start with your SLOs, or you're having trouble kind of getting up and running and getting that cultural shift to happen, you know, because it is a big change for upper management all the way down to like the engineers that are working with it too. So that's a really great resource. And then here are those links. I think Erza also put this in the chat if anyone wants to see them. I just made them tiny URLs so they're easy to remember. So the first two are about doing SLO as code, which I really like. The second two are more basics of SLOs if you want like a refresher, you want to kind of dive into it a little bit more. But yeah, and then at this point, I will hand it over to our friend Isaac to talk about next steps.
Hey folks, if you mind just clicking over one, Keri. Great. Thank you, Keri, for taking us back in time. I'm going to bring you back into the present really quickly, but now that you've seen replay, if you are interested, you can sign up for the free tier. I am actually about to post the link right here in the Zoom chat. You can just click that link and follow it there. But I know Keri showed you a couple of resources a few slides back. If you want to learn a little bit more, just go to our website, and there's plenty of resources there. We have a library and a blog that's very robust to answer any of your questions from SLO 101 all the way through super advanced topics. But I just wanted to, lend a helping hand here to let folks know who are attending that I'm also a resource. But anyway, thanks for the time. I'm going to be real quick today, and I'm going to hand it back to Keri to answer some Q&A. Thanks a lot, everyone.
You're muted, Keri.
There we go. Thanks. Awesome. Thanks, Isaac. So please feel free to use the chat if you have any questions, and we'll go through them. I see one person put in there, is this SLO as code generated by Nobl9 based on inputs from a UI? Do you mean the sample that I had put up there? So that was from the same demo environment that I had open there. Just some SLO like samples that I've used to like create and then delete them. But you don't have to touch the UI at all for doing SLO as code, which is the best part. So we support like GitHub Actions, Terraform. We also just have like a little CLI tool called SlowCuddle, and that's the one that I had showing on the left-hand side. Let me see if I can maybe go back to that screen real quick. Here we go. Yeah, so the left-hand side here is showing a sample of using slow cuddle. So this is just getting my SLOs. This is retrieving all SLOs that are in the UI, if that's what you meant. But yeah, you can use this. I can create a YAML file that looks just like this, and I can apply those SLOs, and I don't have to touch the UI at all. But if I do like a slow cuddle get SLOs, it'll be able to return my current SLOs in YAML format as well, the configurations for them. And then on the right side here, I have like a sample from, if I were to use this in a GitHub action, I can have that same format of like, this is my YAML definition for my SLOs. This particular one shows like a project definition and a service definition. So I can create those manually. And then once I apply them, they would show up in my UI. So it works pretty seamlessly. It's actually really great. I loved them a lot. And in that link, there is, or in my links page, I have a really good demo that our COO did. Here we go. This SLOs as code up here. He does a really great job of showing it off. I'm a little new to demoing, so I feel like other people can probably demo it a little bit better. Can you generate this code from UI LCNC? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that question. Are there different types of SLO-based alerting policies that Nobl9 recommend? Yeah, so the way that we do them internally, and I like this method a little bit, or not a little bit, I like this method a lot, is we do two types of error alerting. So one of them is a fast burn. So if I have, for example, like 10 times burn on my error budget, so it's like using up way more error budget than I have available, I can do like a really urgent alert. And at the same time, I can do a slow burn alert where it's like 3 times error budget burning. Like I probably have, depending on my time window, you know, like I could have like an hour to recover that if I have like a 3 times burn. So that slow alerting, slow burn alert will give me a little bit more time. So it's kind of like, here's like my warning alert, and then here's my urgent alert, like needs action now. So I like to do it that way because then, you know, if I get alerted for like a slow burn over the weekend, I can take a look at that information and say, is this something that is going to actually burn before working hours? And is it actually affecting us to a point where I need to get on right now? So I like that method because it's kind of like a little nudge ahead of time, you know, of like, is this really urgent or not? Yeah, and as for your other question, Rajesh, if you can clarify what you meant about generating this code from the UI LCNC. No. Oh, like, do you mean like my YAML format, if I can get that like YAML from the UI ahead of time? Yeah, I see what you mean. So yeah, I mean, if you did your if you did all of your SLOs already in the UI, you can just use that slow cuddle CLI tool that we have to do like a slow cuddle get SLOs, kind of like what I had in that sample there. And it's going to return all of your current SLOs in YAML format. So you can just copy all of that, and then you can use that to, you know, either manage them if you want to like create that into a doc, and then you just apply that doc anytime you have changes to it, or you use that as like a template for you to build new SLOs from. Yep. Well, I've got a question if there's no other questions in the chat right now, but I'm wondering, it seems like a lot of people were familiar or have used SLOs in the past. So I'm kind of curious what has been the biggest challenges for those of you who have tried to implement SLOs or who are actively implementing SLOs. It's a loaded question. No pressure. All right, Rajesh says, defining SLOs for new and complex platforms with multiple services. Yes, I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier about like SLOs should be iterative. I think a lot of teams, and I'm not saying this is where you guys were going, but I think a lot of teams treat SLOs as like a set it and forget it type of deal. Whereas like what we do on our team, I like to do is do like quarterly reviews on our SLOs to make sure that we're continuing to change them in ways that are meaningful to what our customers' needs are and their expectations. And during that process, it gives us time to kind of reflect on like how we're organizing those SLOs, especially because certain like services could be super complex. And it goes back to how we organize everything in like mass volume systems. So yeah, I definitely think that's a common challenge. I think the SLO DLC, I'm not sure if you've checked that out, Rajesh, but that does a really good job of helping figuring out how to break down like complex platforms into their like services that make sense for SLOs and how you can measure them effectively. The other thing that really helps with that, and I believe the SLO DLC goes through this, but on Nobl9 we have composite SLOs. So the composite SLO can help you kind of like group together services based off of different types of performance. And that's been really helpful for us too, for complex systems. Cool. Well, it seems like people are kind of shy today, which is totally cool. I'm on Twitter. The Mighty Muppet is my Twitter handle. If you want to reach out to me in like a DM, I'm also in that SLOconf monthly Slack space too. So feel free to hit me up there if you have any questions. I'm always happy to talk SLOs. Hopefully you got some good insight to the replay feature. And if you have any questions about that, please let us know. We love hearing feedback. So any information that you have from your experience using it, we would love to hear about it because it's definitely something that we're looking to grow and we think it is going to be a huge hit. So yeah, thanks everyone.